How do you know when someone is heaven sent or just a distraction wearing devotion? You pray for a sign, asking God to show you who is meant for you. You replay conversations, analyze coincidences, and mistake chemistry for confirmation. But divine love is not always loud. God's guidance rarely comes through intensity. It comes through insight. He doesn't shout over your emotions. He waits until your spirit is quiet enough to listen. Sometimes what you call connection is actually an interruption. And sometimes what feels like rejection is divine protection. The truth is, God doesn't just send people into your life. He reveals why they're there. Some come to awaken your discernment, others to strengthen your patience, and a few, the rare ones, to walk beside you through destiny. Divine recognition is not about perfection or passion. It's about purpose. You'll know when it's from God because the relationship won't pull you away from your peace. It won't distract you from your calling. It won't make you question your worth or your walk with Him. The person meant for you won't compete with your faith. They'll complement it. But before revelation comes, refinement must happen. God doesn't reveal your who until He refines your heart. That's why discernment begins in solitude. The moment you stop chasing answers and start seeking alignment, you begin to see what was always there, divine order unfolding quietly. So, if you've been asking, God, is this the one? Pause, breathe. Look not at the words or promises, but at the peace, because heaven's confirmation is never chaotic. Check if you're subscribed to this channel, like this message if it spoke to your spirit, and share in the comments. How has God helped you recognize what's truly meant for you? Before God shows you the one who is meant for you, He removes the ones who are not. It is the most misunderstood move of heaven, the separation before the blessing. You pray for clarity, and instead of receiving someone new, you start losing the ones you thought were permanent. You call it heartbreak, but in truth, it is holy filtration. God never reveals the divine until He removes the distraction. The counterfeit often looks convincing. It can mimic connection, mirror your words, and even speak the language of faith. That's why removal hurts. It doesn't always look wrong at first, but the difference lies in the fruit. Counterfeits feed your emotions. Divine connections feed your purpose. Counterfeits drain your peace. Divine ones protect it. When God steps in, He doesn't ask your permission. He begins detaching what was never meant to stay. You'll feel it before you understand it. Conversations dry up. Energy shifts. Things that once made sense suddenly become heavy. That's not rejection, it's release. Heaven is clearing space for something real. God cannot bless what you still refuse to let go. Every divine revelation begins with divine subtraction. Sometimes you'll try to pray the counterfeit back, not realizing that you're asking God to return what He delivered you from. But love that is truly from Him will never require you to beg. It will never demand you to abandon your peace to keep it alive. When God removes, He's not punishing you, He's protecting your purpose. This first move feels cruel because it empties you before it fills you. Yet, that emptiness is the altar where the new will be built. You must allow God to cleanse before He can crown. The silence after. Removal is not loneliness, it's preparation. So if everything familiar seems to be fading, take heart. The loss you're mourning may be the very proof that heaven is moving. God removes before He reveals, because the wrong person can block the right one from entering. Comment: I trust God's removal before His reveal. After God removes the counterfeit, He begins to create alignment. You'll start to notice that the right connection doesn't come through chaos, it flows through calling. Divine. Alignment is not about two people being perfect. It's about two spirits walking toward the same destiny. It's not about attraction that fades with time, but about agreement that endures through seasons. When it's from God, You don't have to force connection or chase consistency. The relationship naturally gravitates toward growth. Conversations carry clarity. The presence of the other person doesn't drain your energy. It awakens your purpose. They challenge you, not to control you, but to call you higher. They don't compete with your mission, they complement it. God confirms alignment through purpose, not through perfection. You might still have differences, but they don't divide. They define your dynamic. Each strength covers the other's weakness. Each word spoken in truth builds rather than breaks. It's the quiet recognition that this isn't just love, it's legacy. When God aligns two people, their paths begin to echo the same rhythm. One prays, the other agrees. One dreams, the other supports. One doubts, the other reminds them of faith. It's a holy partnership where both are refined, not reduced. The relationship becomes a sanctuary, not a stage, a place where both can grow closer to God together. But alignment requires surrender. Sometimes God will delay the union until both hearts are matured enough to handle His purpose. If one is ready and the other is not, He will hold back the reveal until timing meets preparation. Because what is divine cannot thrive in disorder. So if you've met someone and you sense peace instead of pressure, growth instead of games, that's not coincidence, it's confirmation. The evidence of divine alignment isn't in how perfect the connection feels, but in how purposeful it becomes. The person God sends will not pull you off your path, they'll help you walk it with greater faith. Reflect in the comments. Has God ever aligned you with someone who pushed you closer to your purpose? Every divine story includes a season of silence. After peace comes quiet, and after alignment comes waiting. It's the moment when God steps back, not because He's gone, but because He's testing the trust you built when He was near. The same God who confirmed can now seem distant. The one you prayed for feels uncertain. The signs stop appearing, and heaven goes still. But silence is never absence, it's assessment. God doesn't test to confuse you. He tests to strengthen what He confirmed. He wants to see if you can still believe without new evidence, if your heart can remain steady when feelings fluctuate. Divine silence exposes dependence. It shows whether your faith rests in the presence of signs or in the character of the sender. In this season, many people panic. They question, overthink, and try to force what God has asked them to trust. But rushing divine timing never produces divine results. What God confirms, He will sustain, but only in His time. Sometimes He hides the promise to purify the intention. If love is truly from Him, distance will not destroy it, delay will deepen it. The delay is where purpose matures. It's where prayer replaces panic and surrender replaces striving. In that quiet space, God refines motives and strips away fear. You start realizing that His silence is not punishment, it's strategy. He is preparing both hearts separately so that when the next move comes, it can last. So if you find yourself in a season of waiting, don't let worry rewrite what God already confirmed. Faith is not proven by what you receive, but by how you wait. The silence is not a void. It's a classroom where God teaches you the language of trust. When He moves again, it will be undeniable. Until then, stand firm, pray faithfully, and remember, the teacher is always quiet during the test. Comment: I thank God for His perfect timing. The final move of God is the quietest and the clearest. After the removal, alignment and delay comes confirmation through peace and fruit. This is not an emotional rush or a dramatic revelation. It's the steady calm that rests on your spirit when you are exactly where you're meant to be. Divine confirmation is not loud, it's lasting. It doesn't shout, it stays. When love is from God, it begins to bear fruit that cannot be faked. You notice growth in your patience, compassion, and emotional maturity. You find yourself praying more, not worrying more. You see humility replacing pride, understanding replacing fear. That's fruit, the evidence of heaven at work within human hearts. Peace and fruit always arrive together. Peace is the internal confirmation, fruit is the external proof. One guards your heart, the other reveals your growth. God doesn't confirm with chaos, He confirms with consistency. When it's divine, you don't have to chase reassurance, your spirit already knows. Even when storms come, the connection endures because it's rooted in something deeper than emotion. And that's how you distinguish divine love from desire. Desire demands, divine love develops. Desire drains, divine love disciplines. The fruit of a godly connection isn't just happiness, it's holiness. You both begin to mirror the character of Christ in how you love, forgive, and wait. But remember this, peace doesn't always mean perfection. You will still have misunderstandings, but they won't break you. You will still face trials, but they'll refine you. Peace doesn't erase difficulty, it anchors you in it. If you're walking in a relationship that multiplies grace, fuels your faith, and consistently produces good fruit, you're not in confusion, you're in confirmation. Because when God writes the story, peace becomes the punctuation mark after every chapter. Nothing God does is random. There is a rhythm in the way heaven moves, a sacred pattern woven into every delay, every silence, every encounter. When you start to recognize that rhythm, you stop resisting and start resting. Because divine timing is not just about when something happens, it's about who you've become. When it finally does, God's pattern is always preparation before presentation. He builds the foundation before revealing the blessing. Every season of waiting carries unseen construction. While you're asking for answers, God is aligning the right conditions, healing hidden wounds, and reshaping desires that would sabotage the promise if granted too soon. The delay isn't denial, it's divine design. You see, God doesn't rush what He intends to last. The enemy tempts through urgency, but heaven teaches through pacing. Every relationship that carries destiny must pass through divine timing, because anything that grows outside its appointed season becomes fragile. When it's divine, it ripens slowly, until both hearts can hold it. There's beauty in the rhythm. Once you stop fighting it, you begin to realize that God's pauses are protective. His "not yet" is still a promise. Every moment He withholds is another layer of preparation for what's ahead. And when He finally says now, you'll understand why He made you wait, because what's mature doesn't break under blessing. Divine timing follows the same spiritual order in every story: pruning, preparation, purpose, and promise. The pattern never fails. What changes is how patient we are while it unfolds. When your heart learns that rhythm, peace becomes your default. You stop demanding signs and start dancing in sync with His silence. So instead of asking, "When, God?" start asking, "What are you building in me while I wait?" That question transforms anxiety into awareness, impatience into intimacy. Heaven is never late, it's simply precise. And when God finally moves, you'll see that His timing was not slow, it was surgical. Reflect in the comments. Have you learned to see God's pattern in your own waiting? Even after God confirms His plan, your heart will still want to run ahead of Him. It's human nature, to want clarity before completion, to crave the comfort of knowing how it will all unfold. You see glimpses of the promise, and suddenly you want the whole picture. But divine timing doesn't bend to impatience. God often lets the desire grow stronger, so you can finally learn that faith isn't about getting what you want quickly. It's about trusting what you were promised completely. The heart that rushes is the heart that fears delay. Yet God's love is patient enough to slow you down. Every time you try to move too fast, He allows resistance, not to punish you, but to protect you. The delay is His mercy in disguise, a divine speed limit keeping you from crashing into blessings you aren't ready to carry. When you rush, you risk mistaking motion for progress. You confuse excitement for confirmation. But what's truly divine will never demand you to hurry. It will invite you to prepare. Because love from God is not fragile, it can withstand time. If it's meant for you, it will still be there after you grow, after you heal, after you surrender. God teaches patience by withholding what you want until it no longer controls you. He waits until your desire is purified, until you can love the gift without idolizing it. The waiting is where your motives are revealed, where your roots deepen, where peace becomes stronger than passion. So when your heart starts racing, pause, remember who set the pace. God is not late, He's intentional. The same hand that wrote your promise is still turning the pages of your process. And if you learn to walk instead of run, you'll discover the beauty of arriving without losing yourself on the way. The person who waits well doesn't lose time, they redeem it, because every moment spent trusting God's pace is shaping you into someone who can hold what's holy without trembling. Comment: I trust God's pace for my life. When God sends someone, the evidence is peace, not pressure. Heaven-sent connections do not arrive wrapped in confusion or emotional chaos. They come clothed in clarity. You don't have to force conversations, beg for attention, or chase. Consistency. You simply breathe, and it feels safe. That's how the divine announces itself, not through noise, but through stillness that carries recognition. A connection from God will call you higher, not drain you lower. It won't glorify your wounds. It will guide you toward healing. It will inspire you to pray more, to love deeper, and to walk in purpose. Even in disagreement, there will be honor. Even in distance, there will be peace. Because what's built on prayer doesn't fall apart through pressure. It bends, learns, and rebuilds stronger. Divine relationships have fingerprints you can't fake. You'll notice spiritual fruit before romantic feeling. You'll see accountability instead of avoidance, forgiveness instead of pride. Their presence won't demand that you perform. It will give you permission to rest. You'll feel seen not for your perfection, but for your truth. That's heaven's signature, unconditional clarity. But beware. Counterfeits can imitate chemistry, not consistency. They can mirror your desires, but not sustain your growth. That's why discernment matters more than attraction. A connection from God doesn't pull you away from Him. It draws you closer. You pray together, you dream together, you heal together. The connection becomes a spiritual alliance, not just emotional comfort. Ask yourself, does this person bring me peace or provoke my anxiety? Do they guide me toward grace or toward fear? Because when something is divine, your spirit knows before your mind explains it. And when you find that kind of peace, the one that settles, not shakes, you'll know you're standing in something sacred. Take a moment and reflect. Have you ever felt the calm assurance of a connection heaven arranged? At some point, you stop asking why and start saying thank you, because looking back you realize that every unanswered prayer was actually protection. The doors that didn't open were mercy disguised as disappointment. The people who left were exits written by God's own hand. Every no carried a greater yes waiting behind it. That's what divine guidance looks like. It leads you through confusion only to crown you with clarity. Gratitude is the moment when hindsight becomes revelation. You start to see that God's silence wasn't neglect, it was nurture. His delay wasn't denial, it was direction. He let certain relationships crumble because He refused to let your destiny collapse with them. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. What once broke your heart now built your discernment. When gratitude enters, peace multiplies. You no longer need everything to make sense because you trust the one who made the story. You start thanking God not only for what He gave, but for what He took away. You recognize that his guidance wasn't always gentle, but it was always good. Even his hardest lessons were love in disguise. Every divine connection begins and ends in gratitude. When you thank him for what hurt you, the wound turns into wisdom. When you thank him for what he withheld, the waiting turns into worship. Gratitude transforms your memory. It takes pain from being something you endured into something you were educated by. You no longer fear what's next because you've seen his consistency through every storm. His hand has never left you. It simply led you differently each time. So lift your heart and say, God, I see it now. Every redirection was revelation. Every loss was love. The greatest evidence of divine guidance is not perfection. It's peace that stands where pain once lived. Reflect in the comments. What lesson are you most grateful for in the way God guided your heart? When you finally learn to walk with divine discernment, life stops feeling random. You no longer chase signs. You recognize seasons. You no longer beg for confirmation. You live in communion. What once felt confusing now feels clear because your spirit has been trained to listen, not just to hear. Discernment isn't the ability to predict the future. It's the ability to perceive God in the present. Every lesson, every silence, every heartbreak has refined your vision. You've learned to pause before reacting, to pray before deciding, to release before resisting. You've learned that not everything good is God, and not everything gone was loss. Discernment transforms how you love. It slows you down enough to notice the divine fingerprints in the details. When you walk in discernment, you stop idolizing outcomes. You start trusting orchestration. You begin to see that even detours were directions, even delays were designs. The Spirit becomes your compass, and peace becomes your proof. You no longer need external validation because heaven has already spoken within. God's goal was never just to show you who is meant for you. It was to teach you how to recognize him in everything. When your heart matures, love no longer blinds you, it blesses you. You can finally walk into relationships without fear because your discernment no longer depends on emotion, but on revelation. And now gratitude replaces anxiety. You live lighter, love wiser, and move slower because you know every step is supervised by grace. You don't need to manipulate, you don't need to rush. What is meant for you will meet you at the pace of your peace. Lift your eyes and thank God for the growth. You are not the same person who once begged for signs. You are now someone who is the sign. A living testimony that divine discernment transforms confusion into clarity. If this message spoke to your heart, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you won't miss the next word heaven wants to send. Leave a comment of gratitude below. Thank you, God, for teaching me to walk in discernment. And remember, the ones who walk with God never walk in darkness.